Yes, sir.
All right, we will start the 4B board meeting for Tuesday, August 13, 2019. All members are present. We will move to the public forum, where if anybody wants to come forward and speak, they may speak at this point.
Talk about the Trails program.
It will not right here.
Oh.
It'll be in the public hearing. This is public forum, so where you
Oh,
can come talk about whatever you want to. All right, no one's coming forward. We'll close the public forum. We have to switch this up a little bit. We're going to pass on the public hearing right now, and we're just going to move through a couple discussion action items first for personal reasons. We will move to item number 1, discuss, consider, and act upon the regular meeting minutes for July 9th, 2019. Questions? I get a motion to accept the regular meeting minutes for July 9th.
Second.
Motion made by member Weiss, seconded by member Van Vessen. All those in favor? Passed unanimous. Move on to item number 2. Discuss and consider and act upon the July 2019 financial reporting and related items.
Okay, sorry, I didn't know we were gonna go there, so I don't know what to do. Okay, sorry, Okay. Sorry, bear with me a moment. Got a little technology.
Do you need a printed copy?
Okay. Yep, all there. Okay. Okay, sorry about that, folks. So for the month of July, our 4B corporation had monthly revenues of $59,663.40, expenses of $10,519.06, and those expenses were just associated with our routine payroll and landscape contracts and maintenance contracts. There was also some work done on Town Center Park fire ant control. So when combined with our current fund balance, our unassigned fund balance at the end of July is $3,019,679. And I did not have any questions for staff on the July financials.
Any questions? Can I get a motion to accept the July 2019 financial reporting and related items? Motion made by member Van Vessen, seconded by member Torres. All those in favor? Passed unanimous. Move on to item number 3, discuss and consider the 2019-2020 budget, including discussion of possible additional expenses due to any dissolution of the 4A corporation.
Okay, I'll start. So staff put together in our packet a comparison of our existing 4B budget and then added an additional column to include some items that we would need to absorb for expenses if the 4A corporation were to be disbanded. So that includes close to $70,000 on salary and insurance costs, since we were splitting the cost of director and other payroll related items. for ongoing costs, you know, there were several things that we've been splitting with 4A, like office supplies, some membership dues, legal services, training expenses, and other miscellaneous expenses. I would say the biggest items that are going to impact us look like a $100,000 budget towards town beautification on the 4A side, and $200,000 have been budgeted for infrastructure improvements. So I was going to ask to get some more details from staff on those items, if possible.
So for the 100,000 on the town beautification, there was a lot of talk with 4A on getting gateway signage into the access point, main access points into Sunnyvale. So down Beltline, coming from Mesquite on Clay Road, and then the south side of SH 352 coming north. So that's what the 100,000 was for, and then the 200,000 was for improvement to infrastructure, mostly along 80. There had been several projects about updating the infrastructure and getting it to other sites along US 80. So in some of that, it was on the south side 80 that we were trying to extend sewer services, water line services, and so that was to assist with that.
Okay, so it was more about sewage and water lines than like road construction.
Correct.
Right, okay. And then also a portion would be transferred out of our fund balance to support the Parks Department. And so the 4B currently does that at the 33% rate. It looks like the 4A portion was 15,000. So did they use a different percentage or formula?
So with the 4A, they were essentially paying for the EDCs to have audit and financial services through the town. And with the 4A, if it were to get dissolved, that expense would have to come to 4B to be able to pay for the audit and the financial services that the town currently provides.
Okay.
Then that's 15,000?
Correct, yes, sir.
Close to.
So they were covering that completely on their own. That wasn't something we were sharing.
No, ma'am.
If 4A is dissolved, there's more budget for those sorts of costs?
Well, it depends. So with the street maintenance tax that was rolled out of 4A is now not coming out of 4A anymore. So the town will take on the street maintenance for residential components, those things that the EDC cannot pay for. And so when you're talking about streets, it just depends. If the infrastructure comes around, for example, 4A currently is going to pay for the reconstruction of South Aston Street. And that's because that's where the industries are, and expansion plans with Morley Moss has been going on. So we're paying for that reconstruction. But if we were to pay for, we couldn't pay for Jobson, for example, because it was a residential road. So it just depends on the project.
But do you think then that the $200,000?
Well, the $200,000 here is more for water sewer expansion and extending the lines to other lots.
Probably related to economic development projects. That sounds like to me.
So, for example, the barn at Long Creek, when they were expanding to the lot and we were going to provide for infrastructure assistance for that, that would have paid for that.
And then, I'm not completely familiar with the rule about when the town, before that, once we're at 7,500 residents, it's the
Mhm.
right threshold, that 4A could no longer do 4B could no longer do 4A type projects. That's still true?
It is still true. Currently, as it sits, the 4A can do anything that 4B does. So if they wanted to do a parks projects, they are allowed to do that. They still have to go through the notifications that 4B would have to go through. But once the 7,500 mark hits, they would no longer be able to take on the parks projects if they wanted to.
But we could still do 4A type projects?
Absolutely, yes.
This may be a silly question, but I think I missed on some of this. So there would be no absorption of the 4A revenue, right?
Correct. It would be put into general fund.
Have there been any projects, specifically, the 100,000 and 200,000, have those actually been set aside for a specific project yet? Have they voted on a specific project, or were those just budgeted?
Well, the 100,000 was gonna go towards the gateway signage. So that was covering engineering costs, it was covering right-of-way costs, land acquisitions, anything that we needed to do to get gateway signage started.
Right, but they haven't actually started working with
We've-
contractors or?
We've
done
been
any
working
invoicing.
internally
Right.
with the town engineer to kind of pick out areas of where the signs would go and then working within our plans on where that is. But no, we have not spent any money or have gone down that path yet.
So, looks like the total expenses from a budget perspective would be just over $418,000 annually.
And there's some wiggle room in that because on by how and when the signage is handled, that's a one-time expense. But to me, it seems helpful to see, because I know with us, we'll have lots of one-off projects. And so it's hard to take 1 year and say that's an example of what things will cost or how much revenue would come in, but how much you would expend in an average year, be all one-time expenses. Additional years just to have
Yes, ma'am.
planning purposes.
And keep in mind too, should this happen and the election dissolves the 4A, should that happen, then what we will do after that is we will meet as a 4B board when council decides 4B board and how the elections go and everything, then 4B will meet to discuss the goals and objectives and figure out what we need to do, if they're still on point, if we take some of the 4A projects and kind of look at it as a whole and determine where we want to go and how we want to go forward.
Any other questions?
And no action needs to be taken. This was just to answer questions.
Thank you for pulling this together. I appreciate it.
Thanks, fellas.
You're welcome.
All right, now we will go back up top and open the public hearing. David, do you want to start?
And really quick, we apologize, the AV system in the room is temporarily not working, so we're working with the standby. So normally this would be on all the screens, and you see the slide that we were talking about.
Just come back up again then? Can y'all dim the lights over the screen, or do you think y'all can see everybody?
And for the audience, this is David McCaskill. He's with Halfin Associates. He's been working with the town of Sunnyvale as a consultant, helping us with various park projects. We've been working together on this one, going back almost 5 years, so.
4 years, yeah.
Yeah, so.
Okay, so basically, for y'all, this is the old Lumia rail line that served the power plant on Lake Ray Hubbard. It was abandoned many, many years ago, and the city decided that they would like to look at the possibility of putting a trail within this old abandoned rail corridor. The majority of the trail system falls within the rail corridor. There is a little piece along Barnes Bridge that would continue west down Barnes Bridge until we could connect to at Collins, where we would hook up with the city of Garland and their trail system. We had a meeting with Garland and Mesquite last week to discuss trail connections. We talked to Mesquite about a trail connection on the south end as well to get us down to Syene, where they would come up to our trail along Syene. So the red line that you see on the plan is the proposed corridor, and we'll kind of break it down by pieces. The first section's from Long Prairie to Highway 80. We would have one at-grade crossing at Stone Canyon Drive. At every one of these asterisk signs, we would have a hand-activated hawk traffic signal. So if a trail user came up to the roadway, because a lot of those are kind of blind mid-block crossings.
David,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm gonna have to use this microphone over here.
Okay.
Just let me know when you wanna change it so that it picks up onto the light.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Do I need to start over?
No, it's okay.
Okay. All right. So this first section is from Long Creek Road to Highway 80. Like I said, we have this crossing at Stone Canyon. We would have a hand-activated, what we call a hawk traffic signal. It would, the trail user would hit that, activate the crossing, lights would flash, and then we'd also have embedded lights in the roadway as well. So I want to make sure that people know somebody's going to try to cross the trail at each one of these mid-block crossings. We've got a proposed bridge that would go over Highway 80. Our original intention was to try and use the existing abutments and set the bridge down on top of the existing abutments. We'll come to find out Highway 80 has been redesigned, and they're going to raise the grade underneath that bridge 5 feet with the new design of Highway 80. So we're going to save the existing abutments, but we'd have to add some additional abutments on top of that to raise the bridge up. Plus, TxDOT wants about 19.5 feet of clearance underneath the bridge. Their current standard's 17.5. So we're going to have to add. So basically what I'm saying is we've got to raise the bridge up. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Actually, go back to that first one. You see a green line. Depending on what happens with the bridge and how our funding sources work out, we may do an alternate path that would go down Stone Canyon to Collins and do an at-grade crossing underneath underneath Highway 80 at Collins, and then go all the way down Collins to Tripp until we can get the bridge built. So, because really we can't build a bridge until they build Highway 80, because if we built the bridge as Highway 80 is currently configured, the abutments for the bridge would actually be in the new lane configuration of the roadway, except in the middle of the highway. We could do it with one center support, but that would mean we'd have two sections of bridge that are about 270 feet long, which is exorbitantly expensive. So if we have some intermediate supports, it brings the cost of the bridge down because we don't have such a long clear span. So depending on how things work out in the interim, and right now, from what I've been told from TxDOT, this section of roadway is not funded. The funding is in place for the section from 30 almost to Sunnyvale, and then on both ends, and then the section in the middle has not been funded yet. Doesn't make any sense to me, but that's the way things are working out right now. Okay, let's go to the next slide. All right, so then we would come across Highway 80, follow down the corridor to Tripp. We'd have another at-grade crossing at Tripp, and then also our future trail, or our alternate trail, would connect there at Tripp. All right, we can go to the next slide. This is a real important part of this. In my opinion, one of the most important part of this whole trail is the access that we provide to the schools. The trail corridor runs behind every one of your schools in Sunnyvale, which is incredibly important because we are going to apply on Thursday for Safe Routes to School funding through TxDOT, and they've got quite a bit of money, and this is a perfect project for the kind of projects that they're looking for ways to relieve the traffic congestion on Collins and have more kids ride their bikes and walk to school instead of taking a car or taking the bus. So coming off this trail, everywhere you see an S would be a trail spur that would connect the main rail corridor trail to the schools. The very far north portion of that would run along the north side of the elementary school and down along the intermediate school, would then run north along Collins until we would come in. As part of the new design for Collins, there will be an underpass, pedestrian underpass that will connect the Stone Canyon West to, Stone Creek West underneath Collins, so the kid wouldn't have to cross at grade, so we'd be able to go underneath it, and that's been funded by the developer. There's money escrowed for that crossing. And then we would connect to the trail system in the park there just to the south of the intersection with Nance. Okay, then we'd have another at-grade crossing at Nance, all right, excellent. Then we would continue through, basically through the floodplain. I don't know how many of y'all have walked down the old rail corridor where the bridge is across Duck Creek. A portion of the bridge, the original bridge is completely intact. What's happened is on the north end of that bridge, the creek has rerouted itself and has washed out the bank on the north side of the bridge. So as a part of this project, we would add another about 150 feet of bridge to continue the bridge over. We wouldn't set it on the edge of the bank just because that's very highly erosive soil. It's pretty sandy soil. So we think that the bank's going to continue to erode away. So we're going to buy ourselves many, many years by extending the bridge probably another 75 feet beyond where the existing top of bank is right now, just to give us some time. It's a lot cheaper than trying to come in what we call armor the bank and put in gabions or something to try and armor the bank. Another 50 to 75 feet of bridge is a lot cheaper than armoring that bank. Okay? We're still in the rail corridor. We would come up to Town East and then cross Town East and then, I can't remember the name of the street. That's right, Polly. Okay, across Polly, then we're heading to Barnes Bridge. Then, like I said, at Barnes Bridge, we would cross over to the north side of Barnes Bridge. If you've driven down Barnes Bridge, there's a lot of real estate on the north side of the road. The fence line is quite a far bit off of the edge of the road. Actually, that portion of Barnes Bridge is in Dallas County. It's not in the city of Sunnyvale. Sunnyvale city limit line stops on the south side of Barnes Bridge, so we're going to have to work out an agreement with Dallas County to be able to take our trail along that section of Barnes Bridge. But because it's within the right-of-way, we've got the option to put our trail in the right-of-way. And we've got a lot of room from the north edge of Barnes Bridge to the north property or north right-of-way line of Barnes Bridge. So, and there's actually a row of trees that runs along the north side of Barnes Bridge, and we can put the trail between that row of trees and the fence, so you get some shade as you came along that section of the roadway. And then the trail would extend to Collins. And like I said, we've had a meeting with the city of Garland. We also met with the city of Mesquite last week, and they're real excited about connecting to this trail system, because several years ago, North Central Texas Council of Government created what they called the VeloWeb Plan. It's a 2045 VeloWeb Plan, and it showed a proposed trail network for the entire Dallas-Fort Worth area. Well, this trail has been on that VeloWeb since the very beginning. It's been a trail that they've identified as an important link that would get people from Mesquite to Garland, and then from Garland's already getting close to being able to connect all the way to Richardson, and then through Richardson to Plano, and then on north to Frisco. So within probably the next 10 years, you could go from Mesquite all the way to Frisco on a trail, and this link is really an important part of that connection to get from the south side of the Metroplex to the north side of the Metroplex. So that's in a nutshell kind of what we've come up with on the trail system. And I'll turn it over to Chairman, I guess, public comment.
One of the things that David didn't go over, and if you look up here, you see master plan trails. We are starting to revamp our whole master trail and park plan for the town of Sunnyvale. But one of the major aspects of the whole plan for the town of Sunnyvale is the interconnectivity east to west. And at present, we have nothing north to south. So we kind of envision this as the primary spine of the trail system. And then all the yellow lines that you see running east and west, and some of them going north and south, would then connect into that and allow citizens, kids to commute, on foot and bike like we used to get to do as kids, to get to their friends, but primarily to get to school.
Any other discussion?
Any questions for David? Comments?
I had a question.
Oh, this is just for the board. We'll open up in just a second. Okay. If you're ready, we're
Part
ready.
of the trail.
Can you please come up here so everybody can hear you?
Sure.
David,
Oh.
they're gonna have to go to that microphone. Yeah, they're gonna have to
Okay.
speak at that one.
Okay, no.
What did you do?
Turn it back on.
Oh, I'll turn it back on. There you go.
So part of the trail.
Sorry, ma'am, do you mind stating your name for the record
Monica Hearn,
and your address?
281 Talbot Lane. So I live in the gated side of Stony Creek, which is gated to try to limit public access. And some of our concerns in a gated community was how do we maintain our privacy with a new public trail?
Yeah, that's one of the, two of our board members live in your neighborhood. And it's been a concern from the beginning. One of the things that working with David and part of the overall plan is figuring out how to work with your neighborhood to maintain what you have, but still use this excellent corridor opportunity for the
Right.
greater community. So we've been looking at, similar gating, locking gate mechanisms, all sorts of different things. So
We're just punching in a code like we do around the lake. I don't know if you're aware of that. But there's to walk around Sandpeg Lake, I believe it is. There's a gate that we just punch in a code to be able to walk around, and then you punch back in a code to get back in the gated side.
So the original conversation has been basically to have a nice appearing, something that would be aesthetically pleasing but also secure. And then the two primary issues or the one primary issue is the only road that crosses it. So that would be the primary issue. Pedestrian
Right.
access is easy, but then the road is just, we have it yet to figure out how that would be
Have to
sectioned off.
figure that
But this is gonna be pedestrians and bikes, no vehicles. So
So that part's easy.
that part's easy, but yeah, the road, and then, and as you drive across that road, you'll notice that it goes from concrete to asphalt. So that section through there, we had to get figured out, but it's stuff we're trying to work through and working with David on cost and designs.
Okay. And then as long as we have a voice on the board,
Absolutely.
it's nice. Yeah. Thank you.
I am Tammy Miller. I also live in the gated community. I'm extremely concerned about the trail running behind my house. I'm afraid that opens up to crime, teenagers throwing things at my fence, aggravating my dogs. I feel very secure in the gated community. Like I can even leave my Amazon packages on my door and I don't worry about anybody taking those packages because it's limited access. And if you put that trail right behind my house, you're saying it's going to connect people from the south and to the north, and it's going to be a very wide open trail. I'm extremely concerned about the people that will bring into the neighborhood and just potential crime, vandalism, and things like that. So are you all considering that? I mean, are you considering rerouting it around so it doesn't go through the neighborhood, or is that the only option? That's the only option?
That's the only option. We have to go parallel with the trail that's already existing. That's what we're proposing to purchase.
I understand that. You couldn't route it around Nance up to Collins and back down Stony Creek.
So I'll interject in there. It's not the only option to go through the gated community. There is an alternative route that is being considered that will go and use the existing trails that are around the lake
Yes.
of the gated community
Yes.
and come up and around to the other side of the new development that's being
Expanded right now.
expanded. Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
So it's an alternative route that is being looked at. I think one of the things, we have to purchase the rail line from A to B, so the entire rail line we're purchasing. And the thought has been to kind of see what everybody thinks about the route that it currently is in existence,
Okay.
to see what people's thoughts are, to see if people liked it, if people didn't, because we didn't really know. So part of this was being able to establish y'all's thoughts and y'all's opinions in the gated community as well.
Okay. I mean, I think the trail is a good idea itself, but I don't like it going through a neighborhood and behind people's houses. That is a lot of concern for me.
Can I respond really quickly?
No, absolutely.
I live in the gated community, I actually live back up to Samtec Lake, just offering my experience living on a trail because it goes right behind our backyard. And personally, we've never had any issues. We've been there 10 years, so from that standpoint, we are gated off. People can't get into us, so. I don't
Right,
know
but that's,
about
but
my-
are you saying you're gonna gate off the trail behind the houses, in between the houses?
That's what he just said, except
You're
the
gonna
problem
put
with
a
the
gate there,
Stony
like-
Creek Boulevard, Rockshire,
Right,
so that's,
so, but you're gonna put like an iron gate, or you're gonna somehow, I'm not quite understanding, so the trail would be like a corridor,
Correct.
right? Okay, I guess that's an option, except for the crossing there. And the other point is, and I understand, because we walk the trails a lot around the lake, but it's not connected as far as this is gonna be connected, which is a little, makes it a little more accessible.
Yeah, I understand. There's definitely a lot of things to work through with the neighborhood, but I can just say from our perspective, living on a trail.
No, I
there's a lot of
understand that,
business.
right.
We've been surprised at how little it does interfere with.
How wide is this trail supposed to be? Did I see
12
12 feet? 12 feet, so that's a pretty big, like a bike path and,
Correct. It's, I mean, use Katy Trail as a great
Yeah.
comparison.
Yeah.
So it's,
a lot more traffic than
for the
probably
funding
around.
opportunities that we're going after, the design requires 12 feet, 6-inch concrete stripe, so
Gotcha.
access, or not access, but basically bike pedestrian route.
I'm not exactly opposed to the trail, I am opposed to it going through our neighborhood. Thank you.
Make a quick comment, kind of answer. We design, the company I work for designs trails for all over Texas and actually all over this part of the United States. And statistics say that a trail behind a house actually improves the situation, the crime situation. More eyes is better. The people that are gonna cause problems are there already, and they're gonna find a way to get there. If there's people that are accessing that trail, there's a lot more eyes going up and down that trail. Statistics show that the more activity you have, the less the criminal element wants to be there. The criminal element wants to be in a place where they're not gonna get seen very much. And so the police have told us, and the statistics bear it out, that a trail development actually improves the criminal situation behind houses because there's more activity and more people to see them. Criminals like to do things in the dark and when nobody's there to see them. And if you got people using that trail, that's what we've been told. And you're not the first person that's had that question, and we've got trails behind houses all over the place, and we've had this same conversation at every meeting like this. That's the statistics that we've seen.
I have a quick question on that, on the statistics. Do those statistics take into account a gated community where people are paying for extra security at that point because we are limiting access to that area? Or are these statistics for generic house freely accessible at any given time versus generic house freely accessible with a trail behind it?
I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. You've got a very good point, but I don't know. I don't think they break it out separately. But I'll take a look and see what I can find out.
Can you just state your name?
Yes, sir. My name is John Tower. I live on Talbot as well, and I have a similar concern with just having the trail behind me. My point is a little bit different, that we're also being required to pay extra fees to live in a gated community. So having a nice open access to our community makes the extra fees we're paying a waste of money. So to the extent the city is going to open access, I would want the developer being involved in talking about whether or not we need to change HOA requirements and the extra fees that are required for that because they no longer serve a purpose.
Totally agree. Totally agree.
All right. Thank you.
And to that point, the goal of the whole plan is to work with your community as best as possible to keep what you're paying to gain, not to take away from it. But we're obviously willing to work with you and the developer and everybody.
And to be clear, I'm okay with either option. I don't want to be stuck in the middle where I'm paying fees and not getting the limited access.
Is the developer still in control of everything there?
It is, until it's completely built out. And so I saw it on these questions, so it is roughly, I live on Rockshire, so the street that the trail would be crossing. And I saw it on there, I mean, we roughly pay twice as much. So it's gonna be an issue
Yeah.
that will have to be addressed.
And personally, I found it frustrating when we saw the route, when we were first talking about it, that, you know, we're in anybody could have come in and bought, you know, if the town doesn't buy it, Luminet's still selling it, somebody else could have bought it. And I feel like when you buy into a gated community, those sort of things should have been communicated to the residents. But
No. And I'll just throw this out there, and she brought up a great point. When we looked at this whole piece, there's a potential for many, many people to buy little sections here and there along the way. So that's was our main concern, is like to make sure we could buy the whole thing. Because if you don't, like I said, you can have little pieces here and there that people buy and would like defeat our purpose for this whole thing. So that's why we kind of looked at it as buying the whole piece.
My name's James Golder. I live at 456 Rockshire Drive in the gated community as well. I had some of this, well, when I first saw this, I thought this sounded great because my wife and I moved here almost, 9 years ago. Used to ride our bikes, so I'm excited about the possibility of having a big trail that we can ride bikes again because the traffic has just gotten too bad to really ride bikes on the road. So I like that. I do have concerns about the trail going through the gated community. And when I first saw it, I figured there was at least two options. One would be you would have to dissolve the gated community, merge it into the main HOA, so we wouldn't be paying the double fees that were mentioned. The other would be to have the the line fenced off, which I was glad to hear you guys saying that you were talking about doing. But then the problem with Rockshire, I didn't know if you would have to do a below grade crossing or a bridge over that in order to maintain the gated character. Because like he said, the worst option would be to have the trails coming through open access and we're still stuck paying the double HOA fee. So it seems like that would have to be worked out, so we wouldn't have to do that. But I like the idea of having trails that we could ride, our bikes and things on.
I have a question for you. I live in Stony Creek as well, but not in the gated community. What, if you know, does the HOA say the additional fees are for, other than just the gate itself? Because there's no monitoring, right? I mean, a camera
Right.
system,
Right.
but there's not anybody in the booth, and
I believe the streets are private
Yeah.
because they're gated, so we're responsible for maintaining the streets and some of the landscaping around the entrance and things like that.
okay. But I mean, I think that's that's covered by the HOA in general, is the.
No, I think our
gated is covered,
yeah,
the
we have
streets
to-
are covered by the gated association.
Okay.
And I think the master community is covered by the town. I'm not sure. I think the roads and things are covered by the town. So yeah, so it's the gate and the maintenance behind the
Gate and
gate.
street maintenance?
Street maintenance and things behind the gate. Right? So I would think, it would just not be fair to have to continue paying the double HOA fees and then having open access. So I think having a corridor through there that's controlled would be fine, or else dissolving the gated HOA and merging it somehow into the master HOA.
Tracy, do we know if any of the expansion of Stony Creek is going to be added to the existing gated, or is it all going to be open access?
It's going to be gated as well.
Okay.
It will be gated. There's going to be a trail system, and it shows it in kind of where the bridge is, the yellow line. I don't know if I can.
My understanding was that the trail system is not part of the gated community then. The
It's
new trail.
that trail system is going to be outside the gated area.
But all of this is going to be gated, right?
Yes. Look at your text. Look at your phone.
Come on now.
That's fine, go ahead.
Sure.
Jackie Fuentes, and I live at 286 Duxbury Court. This does back up to my property, and Nikki, I can appreciate your comment about living next to the lake, but when you moved in, you knew what you were moving into, and it doesn't split you, it splits us. And one of the reasons we bought where we bought was because there was this green belt there, and we didn't know it was owned by, I believe, Dallas Power and Light. But it splits our neighborhood. We didn't know that you guys were considering this. Putting this through that drive, Rockshire, with the gated community continuing to grow, what kind of traffic is that going to present? I mean, fortunately, I won't ever have to cross that for the people that live past Orleans Circle or Duxbury Court are going to be dealing with that traffic, and are we going to always have to yield to pedestrians and people on bikes? And if you've got, I don't know how many houses that's going to be built out to be, but you're going to have to stop at that access. And yes, it is a blind access on that road. And so if somebody gets hit, who's responsible? HOA? I mean, obviously the person that hits them, but what if it's not their fault because you can't see? Is it going to be the city? Who's going to take responsibility for that and pay when somebody gets hit and killed? I mean, what if we forgot? So far, there's a lot of unanswered questions on this. How will it be paid for? You're not sure about that. Who's going to be responsible for the upkeep and management? Not sure about that. That's going to be a continual yearly fee, and it's not cheap because we already pay in the Stony Creek gated community a lot of money for mowing. And for those of you who don't know, the residents of Stony Creek pay for the mowing and stuff around that lake for everybody to enjoy. We pay for the trash pickup. People that walk the trail pick up the trash. So we're already in the gated community, and even the other side of Stony Creek, paying for benefits for all of the city and other residents to enjoy. I really don't want to pay for this. There's other ways you can make a trail. And sir, I'm going to tell you, I know it sounds nice to say that TxDOT's going to have money to have this wonderful access for parents to let their kids ride their bikes and walks. Parents are conditioned to drive their kids to school, and certainly high school kids aren't because they got a car. So you're not going to decrease traffic, and if that was really a concern, the city would have never voted to have 4 schools put on the same street. If you need to do something, you got to do something about Collins before you consider putting in any kind of trails. And as far as safety, I'm not sure if you're aware, but a Sunnyvale resident was actually stabbed, I guess macheted to death on the Katy Trail. So there is no guarantee, and I don't believe that you can ensure my safety. You can put up a significant barrier that's going to protect me being up there. I just don't trust that it can happen. There is mischief that goes on at that lake. I know you say people being there helps reduce crime. I was walking the trail by myself when I see boys standing there urinating by the dock. So you're not going to decrease people doing that stuff. And the more you open it up, the more crime there is going to be, unless you have a significant presence of police officers. So I just really don't think that you guys have really thought this completely through. And there is other options for trails, and it doesn't need to cut through the back of our neighborhood when there's so many options. And I do believe too that in this master plan, whenever the developer made the deal with the devil, that the Stony Creek residents on the gated side are also responsible for more trails that are going to supposedly be going in back there that we're going to have to pay for and upkeep. So I think we're doing enough already. I think it's time that you find a way to not make Stony Creek residents continue to pay for what the city wants. Thank you.
Anybody else want to comment?
Hi, Matt Colvin, 442 East Strip. First, I want to thank everybody for all the hard work to put this together. I know it's been going on for a long time. Appreciate that, and I appreciate all the vision that it's taken to get us this far. I believe the issue that's actually being voted on today is whether or not the trail as a whole is to be purchased. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the actual routing through the neighborhood is for another day. Is that right? Yeah. That said, I think the trail system is a great idea. I think, particularly when you look at how something like the Katy Trail has impacted that area, the White Rock Lake Trail has impacted that area. I think it could do the same thing for Sunnyvale, and I'm excited about it. And I hope you pass it and buy this land.
Any-
Ted Mays, 236 Mallard Drive. I'm in agreement. I lived by the Katy Trail for 10 years. Sold my townhouse in 10 days because I was 3 blocks from Katy Trail. I know a lot of people have concerns about crime, but I don't think you live in Sunnyvale if crime was an issue. One of the future trails backs up right behind my house. I call it the Trail to Nowhere. It's one of these roads that you see on the maps that just, they don't really. Someday I'll be in the same boat as everybody else, where right now I have amazing green space and some trees, but as we recently learned, those trees won't be there forever. So I'm in, buy the land. Land's just gonna keep going up. You get one shot. You get a chance to buy it in its entirety. Make the purchase. You know, the price that y'all are getting is pretty darn good. Considering the price per acre is going in Sunnyvale right now. I grew up in Mesquite. Went up and down that trail line when it was a rail line. It's a great piece of straight line. You'd be doing the community a disservice not to buy it for the long-term aspects. And I truly think it's going to raise all of our property values tremendously when it's finished. So, thank you.
Anybody else want to come forward? All right, we will close the public. Huh?
One more.
Oh,
Sorry. I was standing right as you were saying that. Paul Van Meter, 540 Nance Road. Those of you that know me know I'm a little bit of a real estate guy. In real estate, there's 2 types. There's people who are glad they did or wish they would have. That's it. We get to choose which one we want to be. For me, my daughter's here tonight with me. That's why I want this. She has no way to get from our house to anywhere in this town. And she's 10 years old. When I was 10 years old, it was a different time. We were able to ride our bikes everywhere. Nobody's going to let their kid go out on college, trip, any of these roads. So, certainly in support of it. Also, I've got some equipment with my land. Today I spent a little bit of time mowing some of the trail. And I will donate time and equipment to help maintain it. So, and I'm sure there's others who will be willing to do that.
Hi, Roy Fuentes, I live in Duxbury Creek, Stony Creek on Duxbury Court. And the gated community itself is categorized by the city of Sunnyvale as private property. So that's why the trails that go around the lake right now, to get into the gated community, have a coded gate. So only the residents of the gated side have access into the gate. That way, anyone walking along the trails along the lake can't get into the community side. So, and being a gated community and private property, whatever trails come through would have to have that same type of security, of having gates that are coded to be able to get in, access to be able to get in, because not everybody would be able to get into, quote, private property, which is what Stony Creek, the gated side, is considered right now. That's why we have to pay the extra fees associated with that. And I know the gentleman mentioned about being able to, the routing is not a critical issue as far as the purchase goes, but it is because if you purchase the land, the rails, where it is right now, it's going to go right through the middle of Stony Creek. And there are currently trails that go around the gated community, which everyone has access to. As my wife mentioned, Stony Creek pays for the maintenance and upkeep of the trail, for the upkeep of the lake. We pay for all that as well. There is future developments planned for the gated side on the far east side of the future development of the property. There's going to be an open trail that goes back behind there that it'll still be part of the gated community, but it'll be outside of the gated community. So there's other avenues of access for trails to be accessed by the community, as opposed to going right through the middle of the gated community. And the upkeep and maintenance is always going to be an issue. Right now, with everything with the lake, the land around it, everything in that area is all paid for by the Stony Creek Association HOA. And so when we're talking about this new stuff coming in, the automatic assumption is that Stony Creek is going to be stuck with the bill again. And we paid for some of the bills already. That the original developer, when that arrangement was developed between the town of Sunnyvale and the initial developer, the initial developer got hosed basically in that deal with all of the stuff that he was required to do. So the main thing is there's going to be other options for current trails that are going right now, plus future trails that go around the gated community. So there's not a necessary need to go right through the middle of it. And when you talk about the schools and everything else, these are all going to be teenage kids, and when they get bored, they will do things that they don't need to be doing a lot of times. And if there's an open access to an area, then they're going to be doing things they shouldn't be doing. And as much as we want to say there's no crime in Sunnyvale, as it grows and gets bigger and bigger, there will be more opportunities for that type of stuff to happen. So I just wanted to make sure to make that point about the private property.
Thank you. Any more questions, statements? We also did receive quite a few emails, and these are added to the record. We were informed earlier we're not allowed to comment, so we apologize for our earlier responses.
All right, we've closed the public hearing at this time, and so now go ahead, Eric.
That was basically it. But we have a number of similar concerns. Some of you that are in the audience emailed, and we have your list of questions and concerns. We appreciate all the feedback, both concerns for it, against it. It'll help us really put together the best plan. Please continue to provide your feedback as we move forward, and we'll do our best to keep everybody posted.
Eric, do you want to address some of the questions that were asked within this document?
Am I allowed to, or we?
Yeah, that part was just the discussion back and forth during the public comments. So just allowing for the public to speak, and then once you close the public hearing, you can address all the concerns and questions and stuff.
Yeah, so we did have quite a few, and again, majority of the emails were people from within the gated community. Obviously, that's a concern, and we want to work with y'all to maintain the security that you have there. The route, again, is mapped out just based on the corridor that we're looking to purchase, but we want to work to figure out the best route as a whole to serve the community, and you obviously are part of the community. A number of people are, just stating they're obviously for it for various reasons. A number of questions about cost. So we are in, we have a signed letter of intent that's been accepted by Luminant. And right now the contract is being worked out with the details with the attorneys. The signed LOI is $500,000 for the purchase of the entire corridor. Originally it was substantially more. We've negotiated that to where it is based on a number of factors, but we believe that's a good win-win that was authorized by both the town council and the unified 4A and 4B boards. Development costs, we started this a number of years ago. The development cost, if you've done anything at your house, you've noticed everything costs more. Working with Mr. McCaskill and HAF, they're coming back and providing us updated numbers. The longer we delay, the more it goes up in price. When we first were looking at this, we were going to attempt to do it in one continuous trail and get it all done at one time. It would have been quite a bit cheaper at that point in time, but we're still applying for grant money. The last go-around was a totally different batch of grant funds. Right now, the one that Mr. McCaskill mentioned that we're applying for on Thursday, and we've already gone through a couple of phases and been approved to move forward, is Safe Routes to Schools. The Safe Routes to Schools program is federal funding that's been run through the state. At this point in time, they do not require a match. We are saying that we will pay a portion of it, but depending on what's approved, the entire project that is approved could be paid by federal grant funds. So no funds come out of the town of Sunnyvale. Again, that's not our goal. We want to have some skin in the game, for lack of a better way for me to put it at this point in time, which also helps us in the voting, because there's a lot of towns out there applying for these grant fundings. So we said we would do a 20%. So basically, we put up 20%. Well, the way it works is we fund it, and then we get 80% of our money back. At this point in time, we've broken it out into phases. Based on whatever is approved, the Safe Routes to School is going to identify their priorities. They might approve the entire thing if they think it's a great project, and at that point in time, we'd obviously be working with everybody to find the best route possible to move forward with, or they might approve certain segments. So we've identified the first priority, obviously, is right behind the school. Cost, again, it depends on each individual segment and what the final route happens to be. If we're able to bridge 80 or not, at this point in time, we're not planning on bridging it until the 80 project is funded, and hopefully we can get that funded through the 80 expansion project. The concerns of going through the gated community, again, crossing over Rockshire, and some individuals in the past have brought up potentially, bridging that. That would be quite expensive. At the same time, I'm sure the people that live next door to the bridge wouldn't want people looking down into their yard. So if that happens to be the route and it still goes through there, we have to figure that out. We have to figure out how to keep your community secure, as well as keeping a safe route for your vehicle traffic to go back and forth. Gates, if they had to have 2 electric gates or something, that, wouldn't work probably for fire. So, we're trying to figure that out. We want to be positive and work with y'all and come up with whatever the best plan is for that location. Will there be bike lanes? Yes. Cover the purchase price. So somebody asked if it was a transit system, and no. I mean, part of the whole overall VeloWeb is the concept of getting people to go back to getting places on foot or on cycle, as opposed to using motorized vehicles. But there's no motorized vehicles on this trail plan. Funding for the ongoing maintenance, that's also in discussion at this point in time. We are figuring out what the ongoing maintenance cost will be, but then there's an organization called Friends of Sunnyvale Trails. There's a number of individuals that have come forward already volunteering to work with both 4B, the town of Sunnyvale, and Friends of Sunnyvale Trails to donate time, equipment, funds. So we kind of envision it similar again to go into, if you look at Katy Trail. Katy Trail is fully funded by private for the ongoing maintenance of it. I don't know if we'll be at that point, but that would be a great long-term goal. But we are working on an ongoing basis, looking at grant opportunities that in the past the town of Sunnyvale hasn't taken advantage of. through the Texas Parks and Wildlife System. There's annual grants that you can apply for the maintenance and upkeep of these types of systems, as well as the ongoing expansion going east-west. So we want to figure out the best way to meet the needs and the of the children and the people of Sunnyvale, at the same time being budget conscious, staying in the black, and helping meet the needs that are out there as well. So in no way do we want this to take away from any other priorities in the town, being streets, police, fire, anything else. We're trying to figure out how to do this on our own, from our own budget, and then working with donations, not-for-profits, and grants.
Just to piggyback on that too, there was a couple of questions that I had received about if this would raise taxes to citizens. It's not going to raise taxes. It's not going to have anything to do with increase that any citizen will see at all. The fund specifically is coming from the 4B Economic Development Corporation, and any maintenance, any issues like that will continue to come out of the EDC funds. What the hope is that with this, we have to buy the land to be able to apply for the grants. And so if we don't have control over the land or the property, we cannot apply for the grants. So what had been proposed at one time is that we have anywhere from an $8 to $10 million full project that could essentially almost be entirely paid for out of grants, but we cannot apply for those grants until we own the land or have some sort of control over it. Hence the reason why we have to purchase the property before we can go further in the details and figuring out what everything costs and how much it's going to cost coming out of the budgets.
And just because, assuming the purchase of the land goes through, just because the town owns that section between your houses for that one strip that's affected, doesn't mean that specifically Stony Creek residents are going to be expected to pick up any additional costs, or your HOA fees are going to increase or anything like that. That property is already owned by somebody else. It's owned by a public utility company. So in order to keep them from selling it to somebody else who has absolutely no vested interest in Sunnyvale whatsoever, the responsible thing to do and try to fit it into our master plan for parks and trails is for us, the town, to purchase that property and then take into account alternative routes that would, with some of the concerns that some of the citizens have, if possible. Again, just to echo some of the other comments, purchasing the land does not put the proposed route in stone. They are two completely separate decisions.
Tracy, one comment I wanted to make, and correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't any developer in Sunnyvale that's going to build a housing addition, aren't they required to have trails? It's not a Stony Creek thing that there's trails. Any new development for housing will have trails in it that the developer has to build.
I don't want to speak out of turn, but it's my understanding that there's a couple different ways. One, yes, they have to meet the Parks and Trails Master Plan that we currently have. So anytime a development comes in, that's reviewed to our Parks and Master Plan. There is another alternative that developers can take to pay a fee in lieu of, which is what I think the Stony Creek portion did to the east side of the school. They're doing a fee in lieu of, and so that could also be utilized to build the trail within that in that section of Stony Creek. So there's different, it just depends. There's different alternative routes, but trail system in some way, shape, or form is in that, whether it be in lieu of or built by the developer.
So it's not that Sunnyvale is picking on Stony Creek to build these trails. It's that they either have to or they have to put funds away in lieu of trails.
Correct. That's for any development.
For any of the other areas around town.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? I ideas, thoughts?
You just want to read that section about the no action taken, will be taken.
Oh. All right. We're going to close the public hearing. No action will be taken. We will bring the PSA back for approval. That'll end our portion of the rails trails, and we will move on to item number 5. Discuss, consider, and act upon presentation from Parks Director Burton Barr regarding irrigation and landscaping issues at the four corners of Collins and US Highway 80. Thank you all for coming. Thank you, David. Donald, let's go.
Is it you, Burton? Y'all have a good evening.
Man, talk about how to clear a room.
What'd you do, Burton? Heard you're speaking, like I said, we're done.
Thank you, David.
Thanks, David.
Thanks, David.
All right, can y'all hear me? All right, so I guess one of the things Tracy and I talked about, just kind of bringing to y'all's attention, is we've had substantial issues with irrigation up at the Four Corners area. I know there was money spent, it looks like in 2017, to redo all that. I know this is probably a sore subject.
Well, we can tell that somebody's driven through it multiple times.
Correct.
Since we fixed it.
Correct. And, you know, drip itself is good from a water conservation standpoint. It's good if you've got plants that have a certain type of root system. There's a lot of benefits to the drip system, but at the same time, there's a lot of drawbacks too. In terms of issues with the system, you don't actually know, you can't see them. You see them when a plant dies, and you know you got a problem. You know, it's designed to be buried underneath mulch. As mulch breaks down, it's going to eventually turn back into some sort of soil, become part of the soil. The soil clogs all of the little nozzles. Again, you don't see any of that. Kind of what we're experiencing right now, aside from the semis driving through the flower beds, is the sloped areas that are on the high sides. The water, if we do have the drip on, the water is basically running off because of the slope. Finding the lowest point, it's crossing the concrete, and then it's out into Collins or it's on the frontage road. Everything up there has been, the pressure has been reduced to the point that did realize that we had issues. We immediately started trying to water by hand. What we found is the quick couplers that are up there, the pressure is reduced to the point where it's hard to get pressure enough to even flow through the water hose because it's been scaled down to not blow the drip lines out. So I thought we had solved this, but we're working on it. Some of the other issues that we've had is the control box was actually, I believe it was in TxDOT's right of way originally, right, Tracy? It was in their right of way, but the new development there on the corner old control box actually backs up to one of their curbs from exit from the parking lot.
So on the south side of the access road?
Right, it's on the south, it would be the southeast.
Yeah, so our control panel was on the other side of the road from our property that we're irrigating.
Well, it's really, I can't speak to how it became to be like that, but the water source comes from the north side and the electrical comes from the southeast side. It runs backwards. Normally you would lay your electrical right in the same ditch. I don't know if there wasn't electricity, and there was over there because of the signals and lighting, but it did come in like that. And that should be resolved, I would think, fairly quickly. The developer is gonna move that control box, and the controllers are gonna go to a solar powered unit. There'll be two solar powered units. It'll be in TxDOT's right away. So
Is that okay or no? Just to be in the right of way? Or
well,
we
it'll
gonna-
actually be in their flower bed, so, and they've approved it.
Oh, okay, I just don't want to, like, 2 years down the road, say, hey, this stuff's got to go.
No, it's already, it's
It's
been.
the whole highway is there right away, right?
Yeah.
So we're just making it look pretty.
But from a maintenance standpoint, and I'm sure for the developer too, it helps them do away with that because it is pretty unsightly. And from our standpoint, it allows us to access, and make repairs, things of that nature. Some of the ideas we've kicked around is, I know that Tracy and I have had this discussion, but I think it might be a good idea to rethink some of the plant selections that are up there. And putting expensive plants right there by the edge of the road is probably not the greatest idea because the semis are just gonna keep driving over them, If we move the expensive plants further from the edge of the road, there's all kinds of options with some drought tolerant plants, some ground covers, that still look nice. Desert willows, things like that. Lantana, yucca, things that, don't require as much water. We're gonna be working on I'm gonna get an estimate for what it would cost to convert that over to pop-ups. I don't know, I'm still visiting with the contractor, the same contractor that's working on this to give me some estimates is the one that's doing the other work with the solar power controllers. But,
Are you gonna subset the pop-ups back off the road, that way they don't get run over?
well, yeah, I mean, and the thing is with the pop-ups now, they make different nozzles that you can usually get up to probably 15 foot of throw without being right next to the edge. The down, I think a few years ago, and it's probably still the case, there's a lot of friction when you have water going on the concrete. Some places require that you can't. But in that particular case, you could set it to where your nozzle it's got to be spaced up. If we can get the pressure up down there at the quick couplers, it is possible that we could use an impact sprinkler to try to keep what we have alive. But right now, we don't have that pressure. So, some of the things, drip is definitely cheaper to install than a new pipe in. But one of the things that you don't pay for on the front end of a drip system is the labor to repair it. And so costs that we've spent, labor rates, because like I said, the nature of it being underground. And there's no way to get out there and find it unless you start turning the mulch over. And it could literally be anywhere. You know, labor rates are going $150 to $190 an hour, depending on how many people are working the job. And you know, the bills that we get are typically $400 to $700. I know that in our training plan, our budget for this next year, I've put in for a licensed irrigator to go take the class, take the test. Don't know yet who that's going to be. Might be me. I don't know yet. But it's something that we've been working on because early on when I got here, I identified that it was a high cost for contracting things out, but it is labor intensive. And that is one thing that you gain with using pop-ups. It's pretty, unless you've got a mainline break, it's fairly simple to figure out what's working and what's not.
Do we know, I mean, since all of that's in TxDOT right away, TxDOT does plannings all over Texas, can we reach out to the office up the street and see if maybe they could help us put together a plan for it? Strangely enough, I mean, when I do stuff in my yard, I look up and down George Bush or 75 and whatever plants they have there, I use that and it doesn't die and it, you know.
Yeah, there's a huge amount of heat coming off the highway up there. I talked to a few people. I know the discussion about a lot of the magnolia trees died. Talking with I guess the person diagnosed it basically said it was root rot. And looking at that, when I went up there and looked, I noticed I couldn't find any, unless they're hidden. There's not any weep holes in those elevated beds like in the water drum. So water, when we got all that water, it just sat in there and had no place to go. So that would make sense. But yeah, we'll figure out.
We have some through the trails thing, and I don't know, they might be able to refer us.
Yeah, normally, the state, they put out by region, they put out a pretty good list of plants that are whatever, plants. I just know that we've spent, the main reason I bring this up is because myself, a lot of different people have been working really hard to try to keep those plants alive. And to the level that it's affecting us being able to get everything else done. And just to kind of put it in perspective, there's 18 valves up there. Pressure is so low, you can only run 2 valves at a time. So obviously drip, you're going to need to turn it on for a few hours, but then you got to go back and turn it off, turn 2 more on. So it's literally to water that area up there. It's very time consuming. So
Tracy mentioned you had the fire department out there do it one time.
yeah, Public Works and the fire department, they were generous enough. They I guess I call it fog. They fogged everything. But we couldn't figure out what the issue was. We had the contractor come in.
The last time around, we had bids at like $100,000 and $20,000, and we went with $20,000 because we were like, oh, we can redo it 5 times. But both of them were drip, so we didn't have any subject matter experts, so we're looking for, I guess, your advice once you kind of get it figured out.
Yeah, the thing, a lot of times drip doesn't, there's certain, when we do go into a water restriction situation, sometimes watering by hose is also exempt. So, if we had the pressure that we needed up there. Yeah, and like I said, and as you all know, with the semis cutting through there, I counted it, I don't know if anybody saw it closely, but drip system is it's laid out like, you know, you've got this main trunk that's feeding things, and then you've got all these fingers that go 20 different lines that were crushed, including both sides.
It had gone like 8 feet in. I mean, it had gone a long ways, and that was 10
There-
feet over a sidewalk.
Yeah, there were tire marks on the curb, so. I
Well,
don't
I
know
mean,
what's
could we
going on.
replace some of that area rather than, because it's such a huge area, and I ended up with the same thing in front of my house where, for whatever reason, my builder thought that I was good with plants and decided to, you know, landscape it and edge it, like, I don't know, I probably got a 20-foot deep bed in my front yard, so I did part of it with rock, because I'm like, there's no way I can keep that many plants. I mean, could we do something else, some crushed granite or some rock or something along the front edge in a semicircle format, so we won't have to deal with irrigating a portion or planting a portion. Go with the desert look beyond that. And the other question is, I know I've asked this before, but I just hesitate spending much money until the whole Highway 80 thing happens, which I realize is a long way in the future. And we don't want it to look like crap and have a bunch of dead plants. But
I mean, it's becoming, that corner there is gonna be a hot spot for us, the main entrance, of course. So it is important for us to maintain it, at least with live plants.
Yeah, probably, and the QT and all that.
Yeah, I mean, you know, next year or two, I mean, it's gonna be a hot spot. What if can we get like big rocks placed in locations? I mean, is the road just not wide enough for an 18-wheeler, or is it just because the 18-wheeler isn't really concerned and just cuts the corner?
That was my initial idea to do that, but I think there's some liability. That's,
I don't think we want a truck hitting a big rock.
as long as
all
started,
over.
that's why we kind of went in a different direction, figuring out a different solution.
He won't hit it but once.
Right.
Yeah, but when his company sues the town for putting a giant rock.
Yeah, the lanes are plenty.
We have an expert over here, some potential expert.
The lanes are certainly wide enough. I really don't understand what happened down
But that bridge is already built for the new 80, but
there. Yeah,
I
and
don't know
that
about
was,
the access roads.
Yeah, but wasn't there a comment earlier about how the design's changing?
So the design on a portion of the road will be changing, but it does not affect the bridge. The bridge is at capacity to where it is right now.
As of right now.
and that was one of the things.
Nothing set in stone.
That was one of the things that Lyle, our town engineer, that was one of the things that he wanted to double check and make sure that when we did relocate those controllers, it wasn't going to be in a portion that would be affected. And so obviously they allowed the permit, so.
Okay.
Anyways, I just wanted to bring y'all kind of up to speed, give you an update on what's going on down there. Doing the best that we can to keep everything alive, because I know that, you know, there's some things that we're trying to investigate also right now because of the way it was designed. The main lines obviously run underneath. There's times when I come in the morning and I look over there, I can see where the expansion joints are in the road. So we have had some high water bills, and we're looking into, you know, potentially do we have a leak under there? So it's kind of a delicate balance between high water bills and plants dying and all of that, trying to figure it out. So
Well, I mean, is there an option to pull out what we know does not make sense to be planted there? What is going to be cost prohibitive to make? Pull it out so we don't have to, I mean, it'd be better to have some more mulch space to look at, obviously.
Should we do something like Mesquite does at Town East in 635?
I have.
Okay, because I mean, they've got plants and they don't have any trees. It's plants, bushes.
Rock, too, that is
Rock.
crushed rock.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I think we need to dial back the design a little bit, go with something more simple to maintain, and then figure out a way to push it back from the edge, and just have some fresh granite or something.
You could do granite, you could do, you know, jasmine, you can basically spot that and then it spreads over time. You just fertilize it and from a maintenance standpoint, it's pretty easy. And it's low water requirement, but that would be a good buffer. So if a vehicle does drive through there,
Michael can call him at any time.
Mr. McCaskill, you've been raising your hand.
You mentioned Mesquite. We just redid the beds where Saeed and Military Parkway run under 635.
David, will you come up to the mic just so,
In fact, all
David,
along Highway
will you
3.
come up to the mic just so that people can hear?
Is that a QT or racetrack over there?
It's a
There's one on
QT.
each side of the road.
Yeah. So we just redid, in fact, the construction was just finished a couple of months ago, the intersection of Military, like Highway 352 and 635. And they did exactly what you're talking about. They came in and took out a lot of the plants that were high water use plants. They come in with a more desert, zero escape type look. They've got large expanses of river cobbles and decomposed granite and bark mulch, especially along the edge of the road for the very reason you're talking about. And we did put boulders in. There's boulders scattered all through there. Not so much to keep the trucks from humping the curb, but more just from an aesthetic standpoint. So, and then TxDOT, their standard is to have drip irrigation because they're worried about water spraying onto the road. But Mesquite said, I don't care. They said, we're not going to put drip in because we have all kinds of TxDOT let them do it. So, and if you want the name of the TxDOT landscape architect, I can get that for you. But we do a lot of that kind of work. We do a streetscape project, and if you're looking at maybe overhauling it in the future, I would suggest y'all look at trying to get some green ribbon funding through TxDOT. They've got funding source where they pay 100% again. They don't pay the design fee, but they pay for 100% of construction. So if you do want to, and I think the next round of green ribbon projects would be coming out in probably 6 months.
Thank you.
Okay. But you're on the right track by trying to do bark mulch and river cobbles and decomposed granite.
So this was basically on the agenda for Burton to be able to kind of explain and go over what's been going on, what's been looked at. You'll see a lot of expenses coming out of the budget to be able to take care of some of these things that have come up. Knowing that we're working on a plan, we have talked about removing the dead plants that are currently there for the same reason you just said. It'd be better to look at the mulch than the dead plants. And then come back to you next month or the next month and figure out a plan and what it's going to cost to be able to make it better, because right now it's non-existent. And I'll have to give very big kudos to the Parks Department and Burton, because they have been out there tirelessly, one, trying to figure out why electricity wasn't out there, why we didn't have water even going to the systems. Burton went above and beyond, working with Provident and their construction crew, trying to figure out how to move that box to a different area. The number of hours they've spent over there trying to turn on the water, the fire department for water, and the public works department for putting the truck together to be able to bring water out. So, I mean, there has been a lot of behind the scenes work that's been done on these four corners over the last few weeks, and it's been amazing. So we just need to get a plan together to fix this problem. It's been an ongoing problem for as long as I've been here now. So
we've been working on it for quite a few years.
yes, it's time to take care of it.
Yeah, and especially since we're in a position where our two opposite corners don't have anything yet. So, you know, the future's there. Let's fix this, fix it right, so we're not dealing with it another 5 years down the road doing the same thing over and over again.
I like ribbon funding opportunity.
Yeah. All right.
I'll try to get out there and take a look at those other places that y'all mentioned.
All right, thanks, Bert.
Sure thing.
Thank you.
Safe travels. All right, move on to item number 6. Discuss, consider, and act upon an amendment to the economic incentive agreement between Sunnyvale Hospitality LLC and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation.
I sent these amendments to y'all, and these all number items 6, 7, 8, and 9 are all just to amend when the COs are getting issued. So for this one with Sunnyvale Hospitality, it's pushing the CO date from August 31st to December 31st. The hope is that at the end of October, beginning in November, that the buildings will be built. And all of these are referring to Sunnyvale Park Square.
We need to make a motion on it?
Yes,
Each one?
just to approve the amendment on each one, yes, sir.
You want to read each one?
It would just be a motion to approve the amendment to the incentive agreement between,
I make a
All of
mo-
Second.
Vote.
Make a motion to approve the incentive agreement between Sunnyvale Hospitality LLC and Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation to extend to December 31st.
Second.
Motion made by member Weiss, seconded by member Van Vessen. All those in favor? That's unanimous. Move on to item number 7. Discuss, consider, and act upon an amendment to the economic incentive agreement between Hope Development Partners 1 LLC and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation.
and the same thing with this one, it's pushing the CO date from July 31st to December 31st.
I make a motion to amend the economic incentive agreement between Hope Development Partners 1 LLC and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation to December 31st. Second.
Motion made by member Weiss, seconded by member Eldridge. All those in favor? Passed unanimous. Move on to item number 8. Discuss, consider, and act upon an amendment to the economic incentive agreement between Hope Coffee, Inc. and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation.
Same thing, this one pushes the CO date back from September 30th to December 31st.
Make a motion to approve an amendment to the economic incentive agreement between Hope Coffee, Inc. and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation extending to December 31st. Second.
Motion made by member Weiss, seconded by member Eldridge. All those in favor? Passed unanimous. Move on to item number 9. Discuss, consider, and act upon an amendment to the economic incentive agreement between Baker's Ribs, Inc. and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation.
This one pushes the CO back from July 31st to December 31st.
Do they have an estimated completion date? Because they look close. Kind of do.
They wanted to be August 15th, but it'll probably be another week or so,
So the December date is
just to allow for whatever happens in there.
Cool. I make a motion to approve an amendment to the economic incentive agreement between Baker's Ribs, Inc. and the Sunnyvale 4B Development Corporation extending to December 31st. Second.
Motion made by member Weiss, seconded by member Eldridge. All those in favor? Passed unanimous. Move on to item number 10. Discuss and consider Economic Development Director update.
Just real quick on a few items that there have been questions about. The downtown committees met with the property owners about the preliminary master plan of their property. This project is being looked at. It's kind of been, the property owners are still moving forward with looking at a preliminary master plan. We had a couple of ideas that they're going back and they're looking at. And so that's kind of where that project is just kind of in the infancy development stages of master planning. The Glacier Master Plan, the Glacier Committee met to go over the preliminary plan that was presented at the joint meeting between Town Council and the 4B Board. We had the person currently leasing the property and a couple that rent the stalls, along with David McCaskill, and took a look at what was presented and just kind of got some feedback. And David is going back and Dorian are going back and revising the preliminary master plan. So once we get that back, then we'll set up another meeting to discuss further.
Is that also gonna be a joint meeting, or?
It will be. We'll take it to the committee first for the committee to review it, and then we'll go back to the 4B and town council jointly. QT, as we all know, it opened August 1st, and they said that it was above average opening for QT, and they're continuing to do well and are very pleased with their location here in Sunnyvale.
I have to wait 5 minutes to get a pump.
It's because they dropped the price. so
Yeah,
much on
I
their
noticed, and surrounding gas stations are dropping too.
Well, and they're in a back and forth bidding war with, they're going to compete with Murphy Gas at Beltline at Walmart.
Good.
Is that Chevron getting redone at Beltline and Highway 80 that's been closed down for like 2 years?
Yeah, it is.
It's getting redone?
Yeah, overall. That's Mesquite.
Sorry.
Yes, they
I've
are
been in
getting a
there couple
Starbucks and
times, and
Chipotle.
it's a really nice place. It's nice to be able to go get eggs in 5 minutes if you need them for milk.
Well, and just so everybody knows, bread, milk, and eggs are sold at QT. So, yes.
I did not know that.
So we.
And other taxable items.
Yes.
Shoot, I don't have to go to grocery shopping anymore. It's either QT or Uber Eats for my family.
Town Center Park map. Mr. Weiss decided he was going to go for a run or a jog or around the trails and determined that the map is actually wrong in the footage or mileage that is shown on the map.
Or reverse.
So Brittany and I actually went out, and while we had the UTV for the rails tour, we went out there with a little counter and we rode all the trails. Come to find out, there's also an additional trail that's not even on the map. And so we are going to add that trail onto the map as well as add the one that goes behind Trinity Capital Bank into Derek's, and add that to the map as well so that we can have a cohesive trail map. So we're just waiting to be able to get through Derek's trails, and it's probably going to cost around, in between the couple of quotes we got, is $700 to $1,000 to be able to get the map redone itself. But then also what we have found out is the center of the big post, the thing in the center that holds the map, it's busted at the top. So it's water's leaking inside of
Yeah,
it.
because the map is kind of like
Yes, it's
separated. Weird looking.
so we have to get the whole thing replaced. So it's going to be about $700 to $1,000 to be able to replace that and then add the new map into it. So just an update on what's going on with that.
You know what happened is one of my running partners was telling me how fast we're going. I was like, you're wrong. I'm not going that fast. And I've got a GPS watch, so walking, oh, that's why you think we're running 5 miles.
That was around a 6-minute mile.
So why is the outside loop so much shorter than the inside loop?
That is all I have.
All right. We'll move on to item number 11, discuss future agenda items and events.
I don't have
None?
anything. I think we got enough going on.
Yeah. School starts soon. All right. Nothing else? All right. We will move into executive session at 8:16 p.m. A, section 551.072, deliberations about real property, the Lake Ray Hubbard SES Rail Spur. And B, section 551.087, economic development, project Italian, and project PC.